The bright morning sun streamed through the windows of Atlanta Rehabilitation Center as Jasmine Taylor arranged her therapy room for another busy day. At 32 years old, she had already made a name for herself as one of the most dedicated physical therapists in the facility. Her colleagues often joked that she could make anyone walk again with her magic touch and endless patience. On this particular Tuesday morning, Jasmine checked her schedule and noticed a new patient was coming in at 10 a.m. Marcus Bennett, a 35-year-old former engineer. The notes mentioned he had been in a construction site accident 3 months ago that left him unable to walk. As she read through his file, something told her this case would be different. At exactly 10 a.m., the door opened and Marcus wheeled himself in. Jasmine immediately noticed his strong arms and broad shoulders, clearly visible in his gray t-shirt. Despite being in a wheelchair, he sat up straight with a dignity that caught her attention. What surprised her most, though, was his warm smile that seemed to light up the whole room. "Good morning, Mr. Bennett," Jasmine said, returning his smile. "I'm Jasmine Taylor, and I'll be your physical therapist." "Please call me Marcus," he replied, his voice deep and friendly. "Mr. Bennett makes me feel like my father." As Jasmine began her initial assessment, she found herself impressed by Marcus's positive attitude. While many patients in similar situations often showed signs of depression or anger, Marcus spoke about his accident with remarkable clarity and acceptance. "You know," he said while Jasmine checked his muscle responses, "some people might think I'm crazy. This accident taught me more about life than 15 years of engineering ever did." He winced slightly as she tested his leg mobility but kept talking. "When you can't walk, you learn who really sees you as a person and who only sees the wheelchair." Jasmine found herself nodding. In her 6 years at the center, she had never met a patient who spoke about their condition with such insight. As she worked with him, Marcus shared stories about his life before the accident. He had been supervising a major bridge construction project when a support beam gave way. His quick thinking had saved 2 of his workers, but he couldn't move fast enough to save himself. "The funny thing is," he said, doing the exercises Jasmine showed him, "I don't regret pushing them out of the way. Every time I see them with their families at church, I know it was worth it." Throughout the session, Jasmine noticed how Marcus asked intelligent questions about each exercise. He wanted to understand not just what to do, but why he was doing it. His engineering mind showed in the way he approached his therapy, breaking down complex movements into smaller, manageable parts. Near the end of the session, while Marcus was taking a short break, he surprised Jasmine by asking about the family photo on her desk. Most patients were too focused on their own situations to notice such details. The picture showed Jasmine with her parents at her graduation. "You must have made them proud," he said, looking at the photo. "Not everyone has the patience to help rebuild broken people." "You're not broken," Jasmine replied firmly, surprising herself with how strongly she felt about it. "You're adapting to a new way of living, and that takes incredible strength." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, and something passed between them, a moment of understanding that went beyond the usual therapist-patient relationship. Then he grinned and said, "Well, with a therapist like you, I might just learn to dance again." As Marcus wheeled himself out after scheduling his next appointment, Jasmine found herself thinking about their session. In just 1 hour, he had shown more character, intelligence, and genuine warmth than many people she had known for years. She tried to tell herself it was just professional admiration, but something about Marcus Bennett had touched her heart. That evening, as Jasmine drove home, she realized she was looking forward to their next session more than she should. She turned on the radio to distract herself, but every love song seemed to remind her of Marcus's smile. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would change both their lives forever. Over the next few weeks, Jasmine found herself looking forward to Tuesdays and Thursdays, the days when Marcus had his therapy sessions. She noticed small things about him that made her smile. The way he always arrived 5 minutes early, how he remembered everyone's names in the facility, and his habit of telling clever jokes to other patients in the waiting room. One rainy Thursday afternoon, Jasmine's best friend Lisa stopped by the rehabilitation center to have lunch with her. As they sat in the break room, Marcus wheeled past the door, giving Jasmine a friendly wave. Lisa didn't miss the way Jasmine's face lit up at the sight of him. "Girl, I know that look," Lisa said, putting down her sandwich. "That's not the way you look at other patients." Jasmine tried to deny it, but Lisa had known her since college. He's different, Jasmine finally admitted. He doesn't let his disability define him. Yesterday, he spent half an hour helping another patient understand their exercises, even though he was tired from his own session. Later that evening, Jasmine's mother called, as she did every Thursday. When Jasmine mentioned Marcus, her mother's voice filled with concern. "Baby, I know you have a big heart," she said, "but dating someone in a wheelchair, that's a lot of responsibility. Have you really thought about what that means?" The words bothered Jasmine more than she expected. That night, she couldn't sleep, thinking about her mother's warning. But all she could remember was Marcus's laugh, his kindness, and the way he made everyone around him feel special. The next Tuesday, something changed during their session. As Jasmine helped Marcus with his exercises, he asked about her weekend. She told him about a jazz concert she'd attended, and his eyes lit up. "John Coltrane or Miles Davis?" he asked eagerly. "Both, actually," Jasmine replied, surprised by his interest. The local jazz club had a tribute night. "The Blue Note?" Marcus asked. When Jasmine nodded, he smiled. "I used to go there every weekend before the accident. They have the best live music in Atlanta." For the next 15 minutes, they talked about jazz, discovering they shared a love for the same musicians. The conversation felt natural, nothing like the usual therapist-patient discussions about exercises and progress. After the session, Marcus lingered by the door. "You know," he said, trying to sound casual, "the Blue Note is having another tribute night this Friday. Would you like to go? Just to hear the music, of course." Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. She knew she should say no. Dating a patient went against every professional rule she'd learned. But looking at Marcus, she saw not a patient but a man who shared her interests and made her smile. "I'd love to," she heard herself say. That evening, Jasmine called Lisa in a panic. "What am I doing? He's my patient. And what will people think?" "Since when do you care what people think?" Lisa asked. "I've seen how you light up when you talk about him. Give it a chance." The next few days passed slowly. Jasmine noticed herself paying extra attention to her appearance, even though she tried to stay professional during their Thursday session. Marcus, too, seemed more aware of her presence, his usual confidence mixed with shy glances when he thought she wasn't looking. By Friday evening, Jasmine had changed outfits 3 times before settling on a simple blue dress. When she arrived at the Blue Note, she found Marcus already there, wearing a crisp white shirt that made him look handsome and professional. He had chosen a table near the stage, perfectly positioned for both the music and conversation. As the evening progressed, Jasmine discovered more layers to Marcus. He told her about growing up in a family of musicians, though he had chosen engineering as his career. He spoke about his dreams of designing accessible buildings that would make life easier for people with disabilities. Not once did he complain about his condition or seek pity. When the band played "What a Wonderful World," Marcus looked at Jasmine and said softly, "You know, some people think my life ended when I lost the ability to walk. But sitting here with you, listening to this music, I've never felt more alive." In that moment, looking at Marcus's genuine smile and feeling the music wash over them, Jasmine realized something important. She was falling for him, wheelchair and all. And for the first time, the thought didn't scare her at all. After the first evening at the Blue Note, something beautiful began to grow between Jasmine and Marcus. To keep things professional, Jasmine arranged for another therapist, David, to take over Marcus's physical therapy sessions. This freed them to explore their connection without crossing any ethical boundaries. Their second date was at a small Italian restaurant Marcus knew well. He had called ahead to make sure they had proper space for his wheelchair, something Jasmine noticed but didn't mention. She appreciated how he thought ahead without making a big deal about it. "You look beautiful tonight," Marcus said as they settled at their corner table. Jasmine wore a simple red dress, and her natural curls framed her face perfectly. She blushed at his compliment, noticing how handsome he looked in his navy blue shirt. As they enjoyed their pasta, Marcus decided it was time for complete honesty. "Before we go any further," he said, his voice serious but gentle, "I want you to understand what being with me might mean." He took a deep breath. "There will be days when things are harder. Some places won't be accessible. Some people will stare, and there are things I might never be able to do." Jasmine put down her fork and reached across the table to take his hand. "Marcus, I'm a physical therapist. I know the challenges. But I also know that those challenges don't define who you are. Her words touched something deep in Marcus's heart. For the first time since his accident, he felt truly seen for who he was, not just his condition. Their relationship grew stronger with each passing week. They discovered they both loved old movies, and Sunday afternoons became their movie time. Marcus would bring snacks to Jasmine's apartment, and they would watch classics together, with him explaining the technical aspects of filmmaking while she shared random facts about the actors. One Sunday, while watching Casablanca, Jasmine's sister Michelle dropped by unexpectedly. She stopped short at the sight of Marcus, her surprise obvious. But Marcus handled the moment with grace, greeting Michelle warmly and asking about her job as a teacher. By the end of the afternoon, Michelle was laughing at his jokes and telling Jasmine she approved. "He's got a good heart," Michelle said later on the phone. "And the way he looks at you, that man is falling hard, sis." Their first challenge as a couple came when they decided to attend a friend's wedding. The venue was an old building with limited accessibility. Instead of getting frustrated, Marcus worked with Jasmine to find solutions. They arrived early to figure out the best routes and entrances, turning it into an adventure rather than a problem. At the wedding, they surprised everyone on the dance floor. Marcus spun his wheelchair in perfect time to the music while Jasmine danced beside him, their movements synchronized and joyful. Their dance became the talk of the reception, with several guests commenting on how beautiful it was to see such pure love. One evening, as they sat in Marcus's backyard watching the sunset, he shared something important with her. "You know," he said, looking at the sky, "before my accident, I was always rushing, building bigger projects, chasing bigger deals. I never took time to just be present." He turned to look at her, his eyes soft. "But now, I've learned to appreciate the small moments. And these moments with you, they're the best part of my life." Jasmine felt tears in her eyes. "You've changed my life too," she said softly. "You've shown me what real strength looks like. It's not about physical ability. It's about facing each day with grace and kindness." Marcus reached for her hand, and they sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear. The evening breeze carried the scent of jasmine flowers from the garden, and in that moment, both of them knew that what they had found was rare and precious. Their love wasn't about overcoming disability or breaking barriers. It was about two people who found in each other exactly what they needed: understanding, respect, and a deep connection that went far beyond the physical. As the evening grew darker and the stars shone brighter, they both silently thanked whatever twist of fate had brought them together at that rehabilitation center. As Jasmine and Marcus's relationship grew stronger, they began to face the real challenges that came with their situation. It started one evening when they tried to have dinner at a new restaurant that had claimed to be wheelchair accessible. When they arrived, they found that the accessible entrance had two small steps leading to it. Marcus saw the frustration on Jasmine's face and gently touched her hand. "Hey, it's okay, we can go somewhere else." But Jasmine was upset. "No, it's not okay. They shouldn't advertise as accessible if they're not." She took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "This happens too often." They ended up at their favorite pizza place instead, but the incident stuck with both of them. Later that night, Marcus couldn't sleep, thinking about how these situations affected Jasmine. He didn't want to be the reason she couldn't experience new places. The next weekend, during their regular Sunday lunch at Jasmine's mother's house, another reality check came their way. While Marcus was helping Jasmine's nephew with his math homework in the living room, he overheard a conversation in the kitchen. "Baby," Jasmine's mother, Patricia, said in a low voice, "I know you care about him, but have you really thought about the future? What about having children? Taking care of a family?" "Mama," Jasmine replied firmly, "Marcus is more capable than most able-bodied men I know, and our future is for us to figure out." Marcus pretended he hadn't heard when they came back, but that night, he faced his own doubts. He sat in his apartment, looking at old photos from before his accident. Pictures of him hiking, swimming, standing tall at construction sites. Would it be fair to ask Jasmine to give up those kinds of experiences? The next day, Marcus canceled their dinner plans, saying he wasn't feeling well, but Jasmine knew him better now. She showed up at his apartment with takeout and a determined look on her face. "Talk to me," she said, setting up their dinner. "What's really going on?" Marcus wheeled himself to the window, looking out at the city lights. "I heard your mother yesterday," he admitted. "And she's not wrong. There are so many things I might never be able to give you. Jasmine walked over and knelt beside his wheelchair, making sure they were at eye level. Marcus Bennett, listen to me carefully. I'm not with you for what you can or can't do. I'm with you because you make me laugh. You challenge me to think differently, and you have the kindest heart of anyone I've ever known. Tears formed in Marcus's eyes. But what about the stairs? The whispers? The places we can't go? The things we can't do? We'll find our own ways, Jasmine said firmly. And as for the stairs, let them stare. They'll see what real love looks like. That conversation marked a turning point in their relationship. Instead of letting challenges defeat them, they started finding creative solutions. When a local theater wasn't accessible, Marcus used his engineering skills to design a portable ramp, which the theater owner later adopted permanently. They'd also began attending a support group for couples where one partner had a disability. There, they met other couples who shared their experiences and advice. It helped them see that their challenges weren't unique, and that many couples before them had found ways to build beautiful lives together. One evening, after a particularly good support group session, they stopped at a park near Marcus's apartment. The sun was setting, painting the sky in beautiful shades of orange and pink. You know what I've learned? Marcus said, watching children play on the nearby swings. Love isn't about being perfect or doing everything right. It's about finding someone who makes the hard days easier and the good days better. Jasmine smiled, sitting on a bench beside his wheelchair. And you do that for me, every single day. As they sat there, a young couple walked by, the woman clearly pregnant. Instead of feeling sad about what might not be possible, Marcus found himself imagining different kinds of futures, ones filled with love, laughter, and possibilities they hadn't even considered yet. That night, as Marcus watched Jasmine drive away, he made a decision. Their love was worth fighting for, worth facing every challenge that came their way, and unknown to Jasmine, he had already started planning something that would show her just how committed he was to their future together. Marcus spent 3 weeks planning the perfect proposal. He wanted it to be special, something that would show Jasmine how much thought and love he put into every detail. With help from Lisa, Jasmine's best friend, he managed to keep everything a secret while making all the arrangements. On a warm Saturday morning, Jasmine received a mysterious text from Lisa asking her to dress up for a special lunch. When Lisa picked her up, Jasmine noticed her friend seemed excited but wouldn't explain why. They drove to the Blue Note, the jazz club where Jasmine and Marcus had their first date. Lisa, what's going on? Jasmine asked as they approached the club. The Blue Note isn't even open for lunch. Lisa just smiled and opened the door. Inside, the usually dimly lit club was transformed. Soft natural light streamed through the usually covered windows, and white roses, Jasmine's favorite flowers, decorated every table. The stage was set up with instruments. The club was empty except for one person. Marcus sat in his wheelchair on the stage, wearing a sharp black suit. He smiled when he saw Jasmine, and her heart skipped a beat. As she walked closer, she noticed something different about his chair. It had been decorated with tiny white lights that twinkled like stars. "What is all this?" Jasmine asked, her voice soft with wonder. Marcus wheeled himself to the edge of the stage, which had a small ramp installed. "Remember the song that was playing the first time we really talked here?" he asked. Before Jasmine could answer, music filled the room. It was "What a Wonderful World," their song. But this time, it wasn't a recording. From the back room, a small jazz band emerged, playing the melody live. Jasmine recognized them as the same musicians who had performed on their first date. "You did all this?" she asked, tears forming in her eyes. Marcus reached for her hand. "With a little help," he admitted. "Jasmine, when I had my accident, I thought my life as I knew it was over. I focused on all the things I couldn't do anymore." He paused, squeezing her hand. "But then I met you, and you showed me all the things I could still do. You never saw my wheelchair, you just saw me." The band played softly in the background as Marcus continued. "You know, my grandmother used to tell me that true love isn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about finding someone who makes every ordinary day extraordinary." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a beautiful vintage ring with a single diamond surrounded by small sapphires. "This was my grandmother's ring," he explained. "She gave it to me before she passed away, telling me to save it for someone special, someone who could see with their heart." Jasmine was crying openly now, but her smile was radiant. Marcus opened the box and held up the ring. Jasmine Taylor, you make every day of my life better just by being in it. You've shown me that love has no limitations, that happiness isn't about where you can walk but who you walk through life with. Will you marry me? The band had stopped playing, and the room was completely silent except for the sound of Jasmine's happy tears. She knelt down beside Marcus's wheelchair, bringing herself to his eye level, just as she had done so many times before in their relationship. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, Marcus Bennett, I will marry you. As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, the band burst into a joyful rendition of What a Wonderful World. Lisa, who had been quietly taking photos, was crying too. From the back room, more people emerged, their families, friends from the support group, even some of the staff from the rehabilitation center where they first met. Marcus had arranged for a small celebration, complete with champagne and cake. As their loved ones gathered around to congratulate them, Jasmine couldn't stop looking at her ring and at Marcus. She knew some people might not understand their love, but in that moment, everything felt perfect. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down, Marcus and Jasmine shared a quiet moment alone. You know what? Jasmine said, still admiring her ring. Your grandmother was right. Love isn't about perfect moments, but somehow, you made this moment perfect anyway. Marcus smiled, pulling her close for a kiss. This is just the beginning, he said softly. We have so many more perfect moments ahead of us. The morning of their wedding day arrived with perfect weather. Sunny but not too hot, with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of spring flowers. In the bridal suite of the Garden View Hotel, Jasmine sat at the vanity mirror while her sister Michelle put the finishing touches on her hair. Stop fidgeting, Michelle laughed, adjusting a pearl pin in Jasmine's elegantly styled curls. You're going to mess up your makeup. Jasmine couldn't help it. She was filled with excited energy. Her wedding dress lay carefully spread out on the bed, a beautiful creation with delicate lace details and subtle beading that caught the light. They had chosen the dress together with accessibility in mind, making sure it wouldn't get caught in Marcus's wheelchair during their first dance. In another room of the hotel, Marcus was getting ready with his best man, Tony, who had been his friend since college. Marcus looked handsome in his custom-tailored black suit, specially designed to look perfect whether he was sitting or moving. But there was something else about him today, a secret excitement that made his eyes sparkle. Are you sure about this? Tony asked quietly, helping Marcus with his bow tie. He was one of the few people who knew what Marcus had planned for later. Marcus nodded firmly. I've been working toward this for months. Today's the day. The ceremony was set up in the hotel's beautiful garden. They had carefully planned every detail to make sure the space was fully accessible, with smooth paths and a special platform that made the altar area level with Marcus's wheelchair. The guests began arriving, filling the white chairs that formed an aisle under an arch of roses and jasmine flowers. Jasmine's mother, Patricia, sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes already. Over the past year, she had come to love Marcus like a son, seeing how he brought out the best in her daughter. Next to her sat Marcus's parents, who had been supportive of the couple from the beginning. When the music started, a jazz quartet playing a soft, romantic melody, everyone turned to watch the bridal party enter. Mitchell walked down the aisle first, wearing a beautiful blue dress and carrying white roses. Then the music changed to What a Wonderful World, and Jasmine appeared on her father's arm. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. Jasmine was stunning in her wedding dress, but it was her smile that made her truly radiant. As she walked down the aisle, their eyes met and held, and in that moment, nothing else existed but the two of them. The ceremony was beautiful in its simplicity. They had written their own vows, words that spoke of love, acceptance, and facing life's challenges together. When Marcus spoke about how Jasmine had taught him to see possibilities instead of limitations, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. I promise to be your partner in all things, Jasmine said during her vows, her voice clear and strong. To face whatever comes our way together, to celebrate our joys and support each other through our challenges. You've shown me what true strength looks like, and I promise to be as strong in my love for you. After they exchanged rings, the officiant pronounced them husband and wife. Their first kiss as a married couple was met with cheers and applause from their guests. As they moved back down the aisle together, friends and family threw white rose petals that danced in the spring breeze. The reception was held in the hotel's grand ballroom, which had been transformed with flowers, soft lighting, and elegant decorations. The space was arranged to allow easy movement for Marcus's wheelchair, something their wedding planner had worked hard to achieve without making it obvious. As their guests enjoyed cocktails and appetizers, Jasmine and Marcus took a moment alone together in a quiet corner of the garden. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Bennet?" Marcus asked, holding her hand. "Perfect," Jasmine replied, leaning down to kiss him. "Everything is perfect." What Jasmine didn't know was that the biggest surprise of the day was yet to come. As Marcus watched her talking and laughing with their guests, he felt the anticipation building. Soon, it would be time for the wedding photos, and he had something planned that would amaze everyone, especially his new wife. The reception was in full swing when the wedding photographer, Sarah, announced it was time for the group photos. Everyone gathered in the hotel's beautiful garden, where the late afternoon sun created perfect lighting for pictures. Jasmine stood radiant in her wedding dress, surrounded by bridesmaids and family members. "Let's get one with everyone together," Sarah called out, arranging the group near a flowering arch. Marcus wheeled himself into position beside Jasmine, who lovingly placed her hand on his shoulder, their usual pose for photos. What happened next would be forever etched in the memories of everyone present. Marcus looked up at Jasmine and said softly, "Honey, I have a surprise for you." She noticed Tony and Marcus's physical therapist, Dr. Thompson, moving closer to them, and confusion crossed her face. "What's going on?" Jasmine asked, watching as Tony reached for something behind Marcus's wheelchair. Marcus took a deep breath. "Remember when I started going to those extra therapy sessions 6 months ago, the ones I said were for trying new treatments?" Jasmine nodded, still not understanding. Then Tony pulled out what looked like specialized leg braces from behind the wheelchair, while Dr. Thompson stepped forward with a supportive walking frame. "I've been working with Dr. Thompson 3 times a week," Marcus explained, his voice thick with emotion. "We found that with these new adaptive braces and lots of practice, I could do something special, something I wanted to say for today." The garden had fallen completely silent. Everyone watched as Tony and Dr. Thompson helped attach the braces to Marcus's legs. They were custom-made, sleek and black, barely visible under his pants. "Marcus," Jasmine whispered, her hands covering her mouth, "what are you doing?" With determination in his eyes, Marcus gripped the arms of his wheelchair. "I wanted to stand beside you in at least one wedding photo," he said. "To look into your eyes at the same height, just this once." Slowly, with Tony and Dr. Thompson supporting him on either side, Marcus began to push himself up. The specialized braces locked into place, providing the support his legs needed. Using the walking frame for balance, Marcus gradually rose to his full height. Gasps of surprise and joy filled the air. Jasmine's mother burst into tears. Mitchell quickly pulled out her phone to record the moment. But Jasmine stood frozen, tears streaming down her face as she watched her husband stand for the first time since she'd known him. Marcus was tall, taller than Jasmine had imagined. Though he needed the support of the frame and the braces, he stood straight and proud, a huge smile on his face despite the obvious effort it took. "Hi," he said softly, now at eye level with his wife. Jasmine couldn't speak. She stepped forward and gently placed her hands on his face, looking into his eyes from this new angle. Then she kissed him, not caring that everyone was watching and taking pictures. "I can't believe you did this," she finally managed to say. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the day I proposed," Marcus replied. Dr. Thompson wasn't sure it would work at first, but we kept at it. "I wanted to give you this moment." Sarah, the photographer, was quickly capturing every second, her camera clicking rapidly. "This is beautiful," she said, wiping tears from her own eyes. "Let's get that group photo while Marcus can stay standing." Everyone gathered around the couple. Marcus's parents stood proudly beside their son, while Jasmine's family clustered on the other side. Friends filled in the spaces, creating a perfect frame for the bride and groom in the center. 3, 2, 1, smile, Sarah called out. In that moment, as the camera captured their joy, no one was thinking about disabilities or limitations. They were simply celebrating two people in love and the extraordinary lengths one man had gone to create a magical moment for his bride. After the photos, as Tony and Dr. Thompson helped Marcus back into his wheelchair, Jasmine knelt beside him. "You amazing man," she said, her voice full of emotion. "I already thought this day was perfect, and then you went and made it even more magical." Marcus took her hand and kissed it. "I'd move mountains for you if I could," he said. Standing up was just the start. 1 year after their magical wedding day, Jasmine and Marcus sat in their cozy living room, looking at their wedding album. The photo of Marcus standing beside Jasmine had become famous in their community, inspiring other couples facing similar challenges. But it was what happened after that moment that truly showed the strength of their love. Remember how everyone reacted when they saw that picture on social media? Jasmine asked, touching the photo gently. The image had been shared thousands of times, accompanied by headlines like "Love Knows No Bounds" and "Groom's Amazing Wedding Surprise." Marcus smiled, remembering. "I think what surprised people most was that it wasn't about me proving I could stand. It was about showing that love makes you want to try impossible things." Their first year of marriage had brought both joys and challenges. Marcus continued his therapy sessions, not to walk again, but to maintain his strength and independence. The leg braces that had helped him stand at the wedding now hung in their bedroom, a reminder that determination and love could create miracles. Jasmine had opened her own physical therapy practice, inspired by their journey. She specialized in working with couples where one partner had a disability, helping them find creative ways to navigate life together. Her waiting room walls featured their wedding photo, giving hope to everyone who visited. "You know what my favorite part of that day was?" Jasmine asked, turning another page in the album. "It wasn't just the standing. It was seeing how proud you were, how much you worked for that moment without telling anyone." Marcus wheeled closer to her, taking her hand. "I had a pretty good reason to work hard," he said, making her smile. "But you know what I'm most proud of? What we built together since then." Their home was a testament to their life together. They had renovated it to be fully accessible without looking institutional. Marcus's engineering background had helped them design creative solutions that made their daily life easier. The kitchen had adjustable height counters, and their garden featured raised beds where they grew vegetables together. Their story had inspired changes in their community too. The Blue Note Jazz Club, where they had their first date and gotten engaged, had installed a proper ramp after seeing their wedding photos. Other businesses followed suit, making the neighborhood more accessible for everyone. One evening, as they hosted a dinner party for friends from their support group, someone asked if Marcus ever planned to stand again. He shared a knowing look with Jasmine before answering. "That moment was special because it was once in a lifetime," he explained. "But our love isn't about standing or sitting. It's about moving forward together, whatever that looks like." Their friends understood. Among them was a couple who had recently gotten engaged after seeing Jasmine and Marcus's story online. The woman, Sarah, used a wheelchair, and her fiancé, Mike, had been nervous about proposing until he saw their wedding photo. "You showed us that love doesn't need to look like everyone else's to be beautiful," Sarah said, raising her glass in a toast. Later that night, after their friends had left, Jasmine and Marcus sat on their back porch, watching the stars. Marcus had recently started a consulting business, helping architects design more accessible buildings. Jasmine's practice was thriving, with a waiting list of patients inspired by their story. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if we hadn't met that day at the rehabilitation center?" Jasmine asked, curled up in a chair beside his wheelchair. Marcus shook his head. "I think we would have found each other somehow. Some things are just meant to be." As if to prove his point, Jasmine pulled out an envelope she'd been saving for the right moment. "Speaking of things meant to be," she said, her voice excited, "I have some news. Remember how we've been talking about adoption?" Marcus's eyes widened as she handed him the letter. They had been working with an adoption agency for months, hoping to start a family. As he read the contents, his face broke into a huge smile. "We've been approved?" he asked, his voice full of emotion. Jasmine nodded, happy tears in her eyes. "A little girl. She's 6 months old, and she needs a family who knows that love has no limitations." Marcus pulled Jasmine into his lap, holding her close as they both cried happy tears. Their journey hadn't been easy, but every challenge had made their love stronger. Now they were ready to share that love with a child who needed them. "Our story is just beginning," Marcus whispered, looking up at the stars. And he was right, their greatest adventure was still to come.